she can be a lot of fun until she isn't. It's like a switch gets flipped.
So one of two movies that is giving Saoirse Ronan major Oscar heat for 2024. It's the Outrun, which premiered at Sundance and is now making its way into theaters.
Yes, so this is in theaters now. It's in limited release. I'm thinking it's going to be going wider, so we wanted to catch up with it for sure because Saoirse Ronan's always great, reliably great. And we just recently went back and rewatched A Woman Under the Influence for our Patreon, for our Off the Menu last month because we were honoring Jenna Roland. And I had seen so many comparisons, you know, in this performance in the Outrun to, you know, Jenna Roland's indelible work in A Woman Under the Influence. So I can kind of see that there. But we want to talk about this for sure. So subscribe and hang out with us because this kind of art housey movie is our jam.
There is only so much height any wave can sustain before it comes crashing down.
So Saoirse Ronan stars as a young woman named Rona. And the way this film is told, Nora Fingscheidt directed it and co-wrote the script based on a novel by Amy Liptrot. It is all edited sort of achronologically. And so there's not a whole lot of hand-holding as far as what is happening when. We know it's the story of a young woman struggling with alcohol. We know that she has been to rehab. We know that there are highs and lows. But we're not told any of this in a linear fashion, which I really loved. I love the editing because it trusts you to follow along with her performance and her indication of the state of mind that this character's in.
I just want to give a shout out to Kat Morgan because it's the hair.
It helps.
The hair is how you follow where we are chronologically. In
that
addition
does help.
To the performance, for sure.
That does help because if it's totally blue, she's still drinking. But if it's just blue on the tips, you know that she's let it grow out and she's trying to be sober.
If it's solid blonde, yeah, look, it's a whole color story being told here.
It does tell a story, and so much with the visuals here tell the story of this young woman's struggle. And so you see that she's very intuitive with her surroundings, and whether that's, you know, standing on the cliffs of the Orkney Islands where she grew up, this beautiful, wild, rugged, unforgiving, and dramatic territory here, these islands north of Scotland where she grew up, whether it's there and the way she connects with nature or the way she's just like throwing her whole body into dancing with her friends at the club. Like she is living and she's connecting, but she's also drinking a lot. And she can be a lot of fun until she isn't. It's like a switch gets flipped.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden she's just volatile and she is violent and is taking things out of proportion and she's a danger to herself and other people. And so the story of this film is, how does she figure out who to be without alcohol? How does she still have that connection, that vibrancy, that love of life and nature and people, but do it without drinking? It's a hard thing to figure out. I stopped drinking myself 6.5 years ago. And so I really connected to like her figuring out how to be who she is and how to find her joy without the alcohol that she always associates with those moments. So she has a boyfriend, she has great friends. And then without the alcohol, she doesn't really know how to connect with people at first. And at various times, she's staying alone in this tiny cottage on the edge of the cliff. And the wind, like the sound design indicates so much about her journey, like the roar of the wind and the rush of the waves. And who is she in the middle of all of that? And how does that solitude feed her and foster her in terms of her daily development? People are kind to her. Not everyone's kind to her. And she's got to figure out who she is. So in the middle of it all is this really, like, I hate the phrase tour de force, but it is that for Saoirse Ronan. It's a much more grown up role, a much more complicated role. She's been acting for 20 years since she was a kid, you know? Yeah. And this is a role that I think she couldn't have done until this point in her life.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, there's she's bringing a lot of experience to this. And I love this is, for a movie that is so, as you say, achronological, it is so meticulous in weaving together all of these elements because like her parents play into it, you know, her father's mental illness, her mother's sort of religious devotion, like they don't overplay any of those notes, but by the end of it, you come to see how they all feed into this larger narrative and this story of who this woman is and what she's going to become. I'm thrilled that you liked it because you have a very good bullshit meter about addiction narratives. And so like, if it passes your sniff test, then it's doing it right. It's intense and you know, like moments of just that are terrifying, or they're bleak, or they're sad, but also hilarious. And yeah, I mean, she is this, you want things to go well for her, even though you see her at her worst very often. Like there's a moment early on where, like, it's one of the very first scenes in the movie where she's just a complete wreck. She's like literally just drinking bits of drinks that have been left on the bar. And then the next scene where she's finally going into rehab and they ask her about, like, job prospects and stuff. She goes, well, I have a master's in biology. And you're like, wait, what? And it just goes from there, So, yeah, it's a fascinating portrait, and her performance obviously is central to it, but she's part of the many pieces that make this thing work as well as it does.
I've never seen a character like this with these kinds of interests. It seems very personal for the novelist who also co-wrote the script. Like the sense of place is so vivid. And, we have seen many things that take place on like rugged cliff sides, but this feels like these little islands are so insular and so specific that they feel like you're on a different planet sometimes. And they're so beautiful and so harsh and so hard to get to. The people who live there really, really want to live there.
Yeah, there's a woman talks about how, like, she'll go to the city with her husband. He's like, there's so much space and I can't see the sky. What are these trees? When can we go home? It reminded me a lot, just in terms of the locale. Do you remember a movie a couple years ago that I really liked called Limbo? That was about refugees that were waiting to get accepted into the EU, and they were on this like island north of Scotland, way out, and just sort of like taking these English classes and sort of waiting to see if something was going to happen. It's that same sort of like flat, windswept, oceanside, kind of setting, and it's used very effectively there and very effectively here. Like she even winds up going further out at one point. It's like, oh my
the smaller island.
Yeah, like now what? But I was fascinated. I had no idea where this was going to go. Yeah. And yeah, I felt like I left with a real full portrait of this character.
Yeah, and the way that she uses her scientific brain to try to fix herself, right? Like she's impulsive and intense and emotional, but she's trying to use the scientific part of her brain to like methodically figure out her life. And then what she ends up studying, I think, is so cool. Like the way that she takes her surroundings and like uses that as a roadmap for what's going to feed her soul and what's going to make her have purpose. Yeah, I think it's so cool.
I want to shout out Stephen Dillane and Saskia Reeves, who are vets, as her parents, and Paapa Essiedu as her boyfriend, who I think has a couple of really just heartbreaking scenes.
Yeah, because he wants to be there for her, and she makes it increasingly impossible. Yeah,
exactly.
She's tough to watch. Her self-destruction is really tough to watch, but feels very vivid and very, very authentic. Yeah. So, this is great. What's your number?
I'll say an 8.5. I think it's really, really powerful. I hope it's a smaller film, but I hope people will seek it out.
Yeah. I'm going to say like a 9. I love the way it's shot. I love the way it's edited. Her performance is incredible. And the title kind of means a few things, I think, because the Outrun is literally
a place,
like a place where like animals graze. And a lot of times she's on a farm, but then I think she's trying to outrun her past. Exactly. But then I think if I'm reading correctly from Googling it, I think Outrun is also a kind of dance music. And she listens to dance music a lot in her headphones when she's trying to like figure herself out and find her own space in the world and figure out who she is in the world. So
didn't know that.
It's really good, you guys. The Outrun will be in theaters and places near you. Hopefully go check it out.
Yeah.